Welcome to the Distinctive Christianity Podcast, where we compare Mormon and creedal Christian thought. Another story today. For the regular listener, we did an awesome interview recently with James Phelps, who will be church planting. And today, we have the privilege of interviewing his wife, Jolene Phelps, who wrote a book, Into God's Arms. A woman and her family come out of Mormonism and find Jesus. So we're going to talk to her about her story. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I love your podcast.
Well, thank you.
It truly is just, it's just a wealth of knowledge for the mind and just touches on the intellectual aspect of theology and just Mormonism and, you know, all the depths of it, which is super interesting. So
Well, I
thank you
appreciate
for
that.
doing it.
Of course. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So where should we start? Your family background, do you have pioneer heritage? Like how would you describe your ancestry?
Yeah, so I am a daughter of a Cuban immigrant. My mom, she came from Cuba in 1969.
Wow.
And then my dad, who was born and raised in Arizona, in Thatcher, Arizona. I believe that's where Ezra Taft Benson was born and raised. So he, comes from, or I wouldn't say pioneer descent, but definitely early on, several generations back were LDS for my dad. But my mom, she grew up first in Cuba as a Catholic. Her dad was actually very devout believer of God and Jesus, the Trinity, and was Catholic.
Wow.
But then they experienced the Cuban Revolution and Castro coming in. My mom, I think, was about 10 years old when Castro came and took power, and just shares the crazy stories. Her and my aunts, just their stories of living in that time period there in Cuba. It's just so sad because they talk about Cuba before Castro, and it was a beautiful island. So many resources, so rich in, in agriculture and in just, the ocean right there, just the meat and fresh fish and the beauty of their architecture. And then as Castro took power, everything changed. And he was, first came in wearing a cross and acted like he was just a very godly man. So they were excited at first. The people were very fooled. And then as soon as he took power, the cross came off. And some of the stories that come from her childhood were that when they were in their classrooms, the government officials would come in and they would tell the children, hey, pray for an apple. And that's, a delicacy there in Cuba. They don't see apples. And so the children would pray, and of course, no apples would show up. But he said, well, ask Castro for an apple. And then baskets full of apples would come in. And so they were just very, very openly indoctrinating the kids to not believe in God and to trust in the state, to trust in Castro, a dictator, They also closed down the churches. They were made to feel that that if they were wearing a cross or something, that they were, my mom would say that they were ignorant. And that, that there's no God, just many stories like that. There's one story I share in my book that an uncle of hers that she just truly loved was a very sweet man. He owned a gas station. And he said that when they told him he was only allowed to give everyone a certain amount of gas. And there was a doctor, like a family friend doctor, that needed to go make some extra house calls to people. And back then, they were making the house calls. And he needed a little extra gas to get there. But he asked my mom's uncle, can you just give me a little more? And him just being a very good, generous guy, yes, we'll give you some more. Well, he was ratted on by, they always created in these neighborhoods different people that would get privileges if they ratted out other people. I mean, they couldn't even, everybody got a certain amount of chairs in their house. They could only have one house. If there was a family beach house, that was confiscated, given to the government. So there was you were not allowed to share anything you had because everybody just had what the government said you could have. And so so he went ahead and gave the gas and then was ratted out. And then they came and arrested him. And for 3 days, they tortured him. And my mom said he was never the same, like after that. It was really, really heartbreaking. So everybody just lived in fear. Gratefully, when my mom was 18, they had the freedom flights that Johnson
From
instituted.
President Johnson.
Yeah, President Johnson. So they, so the family decided they needed to get out. Sadly, her dad and brother had to stay back because the brother was of military age and wasn't allowed out. So the mom left with the 4 teenage daughters and separated the family. It was a really hard time. You can imagine they came with the clothes on their backs, speaking no English at all. But there in Cuba, they were professionals and, you know, they had education. But here they started from scratch. Gratefully, my mom's family is very hardworking people. And so they came and they started working hard. The story is amazing. One of my aunts and my mom wrote a letter to Nixon at the time asking if they could get a scholarship to go to a college. And he granted them a scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah, so they went to Caldwell. It was a Catholic college there in New Jersey. It was Caldwell Women's College or something. So they started to go there, and it's just, I mean, the Cuban people are definitely fighters. They will work their butts off, and so it's really amazing. But they, oh my goodness, my whole family, they're so grateful and do not take this country for granted, the freedoms we have here. And so what they're seeing today as, you know, this kind of indoctrination's coming in, and just the ideologies are changing, and people are just willing to give up their freedoms for, you know, promises that are not going to happen. It's just too familiar for them.
Yeah.
So they see it. So it's interesting, but it's interesting. So in that journey, my grandmother, this was the free love movement era, right? So in Cuba, the girls were very much, every date was chaperoned by a parent. And so here she is, you know, a single mom, essentially, with 4 teenage daughters. And she's like, how am I going to keep these girls safe? And so they had never met another Christian, sadly, at the time. And then these 2 Mormon missionaries show up at the door with the clean cut, you know, hair, not the long hippie hair that they had back then. Right. And my grandmother, they started to share about their standards. And my grandmother never really believed the story of Joseph Smith. To her, it seemed very, very strange. But she said, but this place will keep my daughters safe. And so they converted to Mormonism. I would say now, like, it's interesting to see, like, you know, all this time that has passed. My mom did end up marrying in the church and married my dad. And I would say, like, you know, they were strong at first. Then slowly my mom just didn't really believe either. And so they were kind of a relaxed, you know, in the Mormon church. Not like I went sometimes when I was little. But then as time went on, my parents split up, and then I was 12, and my aunt and uncle that were very close to us, they were always there for us and wonderful people. They were very strong in the LDS church. I felt like I needed God in my life, and so I just wanted to go to church all the time with them. But I had never met another Christian in my life, so this is all I knew of God, and I knew there had to be a God. And so that's how. So from the time I was 12 until, you know, our 40s, when James and I went on our faith journey, I was very, like, strong LDS, like just doing all the things, living my life as, you know, as best I could to follow all the Mormon standards, went to the temple. We did get married. I mean, I did, before James, I did marry, you know how in Mormonism, they're constantly telling you, just find that return missionary. This is what the young women are told. Find that return missionary and everything else works out great. So I got married super young. It was like, I was 18 years old, and my family was not happy about that because, you know, my mom was still of the mindset, you wait, you date a long time, you know, but I got married very fast. And, you know, my ex was not he wasn't a bad guy. It's just he made some really bad choices, and I think my mom could see that there were some patterns in his life. So we ended up divorced when our daughter was 3, and so James pretty much adopted her, and we were married when she was 4. So that's kind of like, it gives you a nutshell up until then. But James and I did get married in the temple, and all the milestones, the callings. Yeah, because sometimes I always like to make that clear, because so many people, like when they hear that we've come out of Mormonism, they're like, oh, but they weren't really Mormon. They weren't really strong, or they didn't really believe. They never had a true testimony. Oh, no, like I believed it all. I was at the temple once or twice a month. I loved the church. I didn't know anything different. And I was into doing the family home evening and, all the different things we're supposed to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
Interesting. I'm trying to think, too. So on your mom's side of the family, did Mormonism stick? Is it like kind of a culture? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to relate to the priorities, right? So it's life or death.
Yeah.
You get to the United States.
Yeah.
When you're worried about the material, just surviving. It's natural for us to humans to prioritize other things. And here's this church that offers some form of financial security if you buy in.
Yes.
At the time, it was very anti-communist.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is time of Benson explicitly railing against almost every general conference.
Yes.
And by the way, I'm anti-communist here.
Yes. Or maybe
so
it was Kimball. Was it Kimball that was in that?
He probably was.
Yes. I got him confused. Sorry, just wanted to clarify that.
Benson
that
was
he was the Secretary of Agriculture at some point. Yeah.
I think he was from, I think it's McKenzie, Idaho, or something like that. So Whitney, Idaho. Whitney, Idaho.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
But I mean, at the time, it's not like you have to go find it in some book somewhere. Every general conference, they're saying this is a battle over free agency. So I could kind of see why immigrants in the United States would be attracted to such a religion that's taking such a strong pro-American, pro-freedom, pro-capitalist, pro-religious, just keep it vague. Stance.
Yes.
And has that survived in your family?
Oh, not exactly, like kind of. And so I have an aunt that's still very strong in the church. So my grandmother, of course, has passed, and she wasn't strong at all by the time she was, at the end of her life. And so then and then my mom was she was dependent on the on the time. There were times where she was stronger than other times, but I would say she wasn't really that strong in it. And then I had another aunt that pretty much early on, she, was baptized and everything, but pretty much she married a returned missionary, but the two of them ended up mostly agnostic, and they live here in Salt Lake City as well. And I'm very close. And I actually really love all my aunts, like even my aunt that is very strong in the church. She is very devout in her husband. So she's the only one that really stayed in. And my mom, which is really neat, last summer, she actually was baptized and she was born again, had an amazing born again experience, gave her testimony in our little church in Sandy, Utah there. And it was just beautiful to hear her come full circle. Because before then, she would say, yes, I believe in Jesus, but then she'd have a conversation with my agnostic aunt, where she'd be like, I don't know, I'm not sure, who can really know who God is? And then she would have a conversation with my aunt that's LDS and give the impression that she is still LDS. Right. But no, it's been amazing to see a complete transformation in her, and just to see that double-mindedness go from her, and her love for God and Jesus has been amazing to watch.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Praise God. It is interesting. Yeah. And I don't know the stats on like the Cuban immigration population. I know they tend to be more conservative, to vote more conservative relative to others. But I actually heard very similar stories. This is kind of a weird story. Yeah. Here locally, I ran for city council years ago, and I'm not the same guy. So if you find some video of me talking about it, I may not believe the same thing. No but worries. I spoke at an event with Ted Cruz's dad.
Oh, wow.
And
here in
here in Orem.
Your Orem. Oh wow,
Yeah, crazy.
Cool.
And of course he escaped from Cuba.
Yes.
So like the Cruz family.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear more stories. So during the lunch together, I was just trying to get stories, and it's just I hope Americans don't realize this was so close to our shores. I think in the year before Castro came to power, there were more Americans living in Cuba than Cubans living in the United States.
Really? See, I didn't even know that.
And I mean, all the stats that for some reason a particular political demographic wants to associate with Fidel, it was actually better before. The trends were already there. They had a higher standard of living in certain areas than even countries in Europe. This is really key to see how quickly things can turn. And there's enough religious manipulation going around on all sides. This is not just against one side here, but I'm trying to put myself in their shoes of why the priority would go away from the triune God that was clearly in your family.
Yes.
And I just hope the Cuban population goes to those roots.
Yes.
Embrace the gospel too, that we differ with Rome on. But they have the true God.
They do. And actually, like, as far as like extended family, that has all come over from Cuba too, eventually. And there's only very few distant cousins that are still left. But the ones that are here, I would say the majority have embraced Christianity.
That's great.
Like, we have one of my cousins that I just really enjoy. So my family, his family, his mom and dad started Cuban restaurant, not even speaking the language. I used to go in the summers and work there, and their family all, became Christian. They were very strong. My great aunts were also Christian. And so but it was funny. My cousin who currently owns the restaurants and continues to run them. It grew from one tiny little restaurant to 7, I think he's got now in Florida. Throughout and amazing food, Padrinos, in case anybody is in Florida, they're amazing. But yeah, it's so neat to see like how Christianity has really taken a hold of the rest of our extended family.
Yeah, one book I mentioned before we started recording that I want to mention for the audience, if you're into memoirs, there's a man named Armando Valladares. Armando Valladares. Yes. He was, of course, he had a typical, more cultural Catholic upbringing. He gets put in a gulag for 20 plus years under Castro. Wow. And he actually becomes an evangelical Christian in the gulag. Wow. So he actually, when he arrives, he's pretty much agnostic, but when he's seeing, and this is the type of stuff we're dealing with. This is reality. Let's pray it never comes here.
Yes.
They were Castro would have a death list every day of prisoners, but a lot of them are Christian, both Roman Catholic and evangelical. Yeah. And they would take them out and they would yell, "Christ is King," as they were being shot.
Oh, wow.
Castro was so mad about it, he had them starting to maim their mouths or gag them. But he said he could still, as a prisoner being close to the shootings, could hear them still, "Christ is King," they would not give it up.
Beautiful. I've got to read that book.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's I think, and I mentioned this, and then we'll move on to but I think one of the most disturbing days I ever experienced politically was the day Fidel died, and seeing the gushing, even from former U.S. President Barack Obama. This is not, I'm not a hate Obama guy.
It's like, this is not a good guy.
Right. I mean, it wasn't just him either. World leaders. The guy who wanted Khrushchev to nuke the United States. Yeah. We now know. Khrushchev was sitting there saying, "This guy's crazy. I got to take the nukes out of Cuba." Yeah. So Khrushchev was more sane.
Which is very
scary. So it's just, anyway, I hope we don't forget these stories, especially if they're around us. We can't forget.
No, it's so true. And I have a cousin in the political circles of Utah. Her name is well known. It's Sophie Anderson. And she is, even spicier than I am. She has like fought for freedom here. And right now she's just one of the helpers and campaign managers for Phil Lyman. But when they started to try and mask our kids again, and which that's just a whole crazy story there. But she was at a school board meeting, and I happened to go in the Granite School Board District, and when it was a peaceful meeting, but the parents, there was about 100 parents in the room, and they were not allowing parents to speak. I think they gave one parent like 3 minutes. And so parents started to chant, no more masks, no more masks. Well, the school board got upset and they started to leave. But they also had a senator come and speak in behalf of the masks. When she left the mic, because she's like, I can't, nobody can hear me. I can't speak. My cousin just stormed to the mic and she grabbed the mic and she said, how did she say it? I can't believe you brought a senator here to speak on behalf of our children that you're abusing. Her, along with a bunch of other ones, that was kind of in the news for a while, that they were charged with disrupting a public meeting and, gave a whole name to that. I don't know if you've heard it, just calling parents domestic terrorists.
Wow.
And these are just parents that are can see that this masking is, for one, it doesn't work. And it's just an evil way to just indoctrinate our children and make them subservient to the government. And it's we the people. Yeah. We are the ones that need to be governing, not these corrupt leaders.
Well, and, Protestantism has, of course, a mixed history because we're all sinners, but has contributed to political freedom in some pretty significant ways. I'll put a book in the show notes for people who are interested called The Reformation of Rights. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, okay.
So, and also, just to be clear, right, this is Democrat President Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank God that he helped your family get here.
Yes.
And it was Republican President Nixon.
That gave him a scholarship.
So,
it was a very different
we'll give credit where it's due.
Yes, so true.
So
true.
One thing I really liked in your story was when you, because it sounds like it was a time when you were becoming self-consciously theologically Mormon. Mm-hmm. Was your grandfather, was it your dad's father?
It was my dad's father.
Yeah. Will you take us through that? Teaching you?
Yes.
Because especially today when the book of Abraham seems to be minimized, this is where he went to teach his.
Yeah. This is where we got it, this idea of the pre-existence. This is where we'd go to for that. So I do remember my grandfather was amazing, man. I love him. I still love him very much. But he was one that was a beautiful storyteller, and he would talk about the book of Abraham and how we know in there that we lived in a pre-existence and that we were all children of God's Spirit, children of God, and that Jesus was there and Satan was there, and Jesus had the better plan. And so that's where we get that doctrine. Nowadays, we try not to pay attention to that doctrine, but that is the doctrine, as far as I know. The pearl of great price has not been thrown out the window, even though I think it should be. But
right,
because we know what we know about it, we know it's not. Yeah, and even my James spoke about it, and I know have done episodes probably on it too.
Yeah, you definitely need to do a deeper dive on some of it. But so you're a kid being taught by your grandfather. And, did he involve the facsimiles? Were you intrigued by the facsimiles? I remember as a kid being intrigued by these. By those what's drawings. This Egyptian stuff?
What does this mean? Yeah. Yes, and I can't remember if he went into too much detail, but I remember him reading from it and showing that this was, Abraham. He was going to be sacrificed, and just that whole thing.
Wow.
So it's just really interesting. And so for a child's mind, and just considering all these things, wow, we have all these answers, and just would make you feel so proud that you were a child of God, and all that stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, and there's that. I think you called him the God of Kolob.
Yes,
I love that term. I'm going to take it from you because I think it's a great insight. So as a kid, you're not being taught of God in this transcendent way, as Christians are, that upholds all things, created all things. Yeah, it's a grand view, but it's more like space exploration. That
Yes.
he lives on a planet far away. And that's kind of the aesthetic of transcendence, but it's not actual transcendence. And this is what you're growing up thinking of as your Heavenly Father.
Completely,
right?
Totally.
It's fascinating.
It is. And I love how you just even said that. Yeah, it's like space instead of this, God of the universe that's outside of time and creation. And that was so hard to transition to thinking that way, because my mind had always been like, okay, this is, the God of this planet. It's, Kolob, and then Jesus, is the God of our planet now, and there's all these many gods, and and they would say you can become gods, but it's known that it's only the worthy men that become gods. You're just one of the many wives.
At what point?
I can't say my grandpa really touched on that part. Too much.
Probably not to his granddaughter.
Yeah.
If this is later in the story, I want to ask you about your baptism, but I also want to ask you, since you brought it up.
Yeah.
When did Heavenly Mother or mothers become conscious? Do you recall?
Oh, you know what? It just was not talked about very much in those days. So I other than to know that there was a mother there. Yeah, there was a Heavenly Mother, along with Heavenly Father, and that they had all these spirit children, So yeah, there was that concept, but that was it. Back then, they didn't really talk about Heavenly Mother, though I hear, since we've been out, and actually, as we get more into my story, definitely in that space, you're going to see where I go when things aren't lining up. It was talked about a lot in that space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The idea that's an equivalent that you're progressing to.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So do you remember when you were baptized?
Yes. So when
how conscious it was? Or?
Yeah, I was 8, the typical 8 years old. At the time, my dad and mom were going through a divorce, and my dad wouldn't have been considered worthy to, and he's actually a very strong LDS member still today, but he couldn't baptize me, and so my grandfather, the one that I was very close to, actually did baptize me, and so I do remember like a sadness that my dad wasn't present. I mean, he was there, but he wasn't the one doing it, so I felt like something was wrong with me, kind of, that my grandpa had to do it, but just like, yes, like I'm making this choice. I'm expected to make it because everybody else makes it, but not because I had such a strong testimony of the gospel, but of course I had it memorized, how that goes when you go up to the pulpit.
Yep.
Yeah. As soon as you're 8, you'll see it, like 8-year-olds just coming, and sometimes younger, where the parents, they're prompting them to say, I believe the church is true. The Book of Mormon is true. And Joseph Smith's a true prophet. Yep. I mean, that's the memorized thing.
Exactly. And one thing I remember, is there's so much emphasis on how it's done that I'm just worried about all of me being under the water.
Oh,
I'm not even thinking about even in my kid brain as it was at the time.
Yes.
You're worried about get it because you have to redo it
all the way. Yes, that's so true. And everybody's watching the water. Perfect. Everybody's eyes to make sure you're fully under.
Yeah. Talk about swallowing a gnat. I mean, swallowing a camel. Trying to see a gnat.
Yes, so true.
So
good point.
I'm trying to think. We covered with your husband kind of the priesthood progression. It makes it a little easier for an interview because deacon, teacher, priest, elder.
Yes.
Take us through the female equivalent.
Yeah, of that.
And I honestly, now I'm asking it. I'm kind of sad I haven't covered this angle more.
Oh yeah, for girls
in the podcast.
Coming
yes,
through.
I should be covering this more. Of course, they don't cover it very much in their curriculum last year.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny. Up until 12, there's not too much other than primary, and so. But I do remember like getting to 12 years old and like knowing I was being part of the young women's program, and you had to earn this medallion valedictorian and all these different steps to get different awards. So I guess that would be kind of equivalent to the Boys Eagle Scouts.
Gotcha,
It would be equivalent to that. My mom was never super, like I kind of shared. She believed that the standards of the church were good. She pushed to those. But as far as like making all the milestones as a girl would be like expected to, that was maybe in a stronger family. She never really pushed that. She was more, you kind of mentioned with like Cubans, education is super important. Yep. So she was always just focused on your education and
survival mode.
Yeah, survival mode. And so then as in young women's, what I really remember was the focus on be a worthy young woman so that you could go to the temple someday and marry a worthy young return missionary. That was always the main goal. But did they ever teach us how? I mean, they taught us how to, cook and fold clothes and all the things that, you're expected to do to be a good wife. But as far as like your spiritual progression, like I don't remember that being a focus at all. Like,
wow.
I mean, we were told, as a point of checklist, like read your Book of Mormon every day.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
But it wasn't about like the spiritual person you are inside to prepare for that marriage, right? So, so I was 18 and I dated a lot in high school, but I met my first husband when I was 18. Well, almost 18. I wasn't even fully 18 because I was a young. I graduated at 17, so gotcha. I was in college and met him, and the relationship progressed kind of quickly. And within 3 weeks, he had asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And then 3 months later, we were married. Which my Cuban family, they were very sad. they were still there. They loved me still, sure. But they felt like it was way too fast. That's just not their culture. They date a long time and wait. And just, there's a whole progression to that culture of when you get married. But, and it was a hard marriage. It wasn't everything I was told it would be if you married a returned missionary. So anyway, but I stuck it through for 11 years. Wow. And there was drug abuse involved. He went on his mission to South Africa, and while there, I think even maybe a little before, he which is really interesting. He went on his mission and he started to have these really bad headaches. So he actually went to a witch doctor there, which is interesting how Mormonism doesn't seem to have to care about that. That
before
seems to be okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So he and I think the headaches, if I remember right, got worse. Go figure. Yeah. And then he came back, and I mean, I think inside he had a lot of good intentions, but he went the medicine route to try to overcome the headaches. And very quickly he became addicted. And so 8 of the 11 years he was very addicted to painkillers, but I felt like I had to not tell anybody. And like he didn't want him to, so he didn't look bad. And so the family wasn't disappointed. Yes.
You're both active here.
Very active. And you know how it is, like in Mormonism.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Yes.
That dynamic. Some of our Christian listeners, I mean, they I guess there's probably subcultures in America that call themselves Christian that may have the same problem.
Yes.
But that public-private dynamic.
Oh, yes.
Talk about that.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And that's like you don't reveal like what's going on inside the family because you want to keep this appearance that everything's perfect, everything's good. And it's not even talked about, but it's so ingrained that we just don't reveal like what's going on, the ugly, that's inside. And so I was just like, keeping this facade that everything was fine, but my family in the meantime, they could see something was off, but they didn't know what. They just could see that my husband kept losing jobs and I was having to work harder and harder. And then we finally did. It took a while till I was ready. I was like, not having any kids because things are not good. But then it's that push, in Mormonism, like you're just supposed to be having children right away. And so I just felt like I was not doing what I was supposed to. So one day I felt like I had a spiritual experience. Oh, it's time to have the baby. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to just trust that God will take care of things. And actually, this, I had our daughter who's amazing blessing. She's amazing. But she, and actually for a while, he did do better. I think it motivated him to do better and to not be, on the as much medicine as he was. But in time, he couldn't keep it up. He didn't have Jesus. Yeah. And so he did fall off again. And it became a danger to our daughter. And he wasn't abusive, but things he was doing was a danger to both her and I.
Oh, I gotcha.
So eventually,
this whole time active, did the local leaders, I don't know if you lived in the same ward the whole time. Did the local leaders ever come and check? So as long as you could say yes to 4 questions, especially the tithing question.
Oh, yes.
And as long as you look good, the lawn is mowed at least or something.
Yeah, as long as
I just want to bring this out.
Good enough.
This dynamic, it doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah.
That part of Christianity, I guess, informed Christianity.
Yes.
And that's not just intellectually informed, but emotionally informed.
Mm-hmm.
We know the darkness within.
Yes.
And we confess it.
Totally.
We have to get it out on the table.
Yes.
And it's interesting, the inverse, it's something I've experienced even with my own pastor.
Yeah.
The last thing he's asking are these external things that were the only things I was ever asked about.
In Mormonism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's worried about, my heart.
Yes.
And,
yes, that's
where are you? Just 11 years of this. I mean, this is not to shame him in any way. I mean, he's a sinner that needs to be saved by grace, like we all are.
Exactly.
And it's just sad that at no point did a bishop, a counselor, an elders quorum, whatever it is, come and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like how?
Yeah. And you're so right. The only time I remember a bishop being like a little bit more involved was when we were struggling because how he couldn't keep a job and we couldn't pay our tithing. Okay. That was the only time. It's really bad.
Well, but I didn't pay you to say that, right?
No, it's totally true. And I remember somehow I came up with the money and my husband was just a little too out of it to do it. And so I remember that bishop just praising me. Wow, she's rock solid. And I just had so much pride that somehow I was able to muster up enough to make it work. Wow. But it was so difficult. But you're so right. Like I remember early on coming out of Mormonism and after I've become Christian, just hearing this Mormon couple that had come out and they were YWAM missionaries. They had left everything and just given it to the Lord. It was so amazing. And I remember them talking because they were a little further along in their coming out than us. And they were talking about how there was so much power in transparency and that when we are transparent and we don't hide our sins, that that the enemy can't use it against it because it's out in the open. But it's so true. Like when it's just all secretive and you don't share, the enemy does use it against you and it's just heavy and you're carrying this weight you just can't really carry.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's a part of the system.
Yeah.
That's one thing I hope will come out on the intellectual side and this kind of lived experience side.
Yeah.
Just as the LDS missionaries, even back then in James's day when they taught doctrine.
Yeah.
There's still the deeper doctrines. So the deeper you go into the system, it's join and maybe eventually you'll learn what we really believe.
Yes, totally.
And maybe the disparity between the two wasn't as extreme then. maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's way extreme now.
So extreme. Mm-hmm.
Well, similarly, in each LDS family, there's this tendency toward a similar dynamic.
Yeah.
There's the public story, the PR,
Exactly.
the Fidel Castro's propaganda ministry version,
Yes.
where they're like, oh yeah, you can come look at this hospital.
Yeah. Look
And
how
then
we
there's
have
this
it together.
private, exactly. And then the reality.
Yeah. The reality.
The reality. And I think, Christ does way more than this, but he at least confronts us in that dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
amazing.
blessed are the beggars in spirit.
Oh, yes. That's
Right?
so good. Yes.
Not the spiritual people that I can maybe help,
Yeah.
with a couple more techniques.
Oh, yeah.
The people who know their need.
That know the need. That's amazing. I love how you say that. And I remember, like, as I started to question, it took a while, but that was one of the biggest things that stood out in my mind, is just how, I think as John the Baptist, it says, you whitewashed walls.
Yeah.
That sticks in my mind. It's like, in Mormonism, it's like the front is these whitewashed walls of people that seem to have it all together, these perfect lives, but everybody's dying inside because nobody has it like that. And they're like, I'm different. Something's wrong with me. I don't have it together like they do. But nobody has it together.
No. And,
So sad.
It is. And, there's even insofar as LDS, and, Oaks and others will like to point out how successful LDS people can be. And of course, there's no question about that. But look at the standard they're measuring against.
Yeah.
It's how they do in business or how they do financially.
Yes.
Or do these things not matter at all? Of course they matter.
Yeah.
But the question is, in the one true church of Jesus, what should matter most?
Oh, it's so
And if
hard.
Jesus doesn't set that standard,
Right.
who?
Yes.
And it's going to be some
So
arbitrary thing. And I just think there's also a parallel here. It's like broader American point,
Yeah.
of how rich America is, and look at us spiritually today.
Oh, yes.
So
true. Oh, yeah.
So that's just incredible to me. 11 years of this.
Yeah. it's
What's
really
next in the story?
Yeah, so I kept staying because I just thought I was going to lose my, eternal marriage, my, what is equivalent to them as our as salvation, and to us is the celestial kingdom, because that's where you get to be with Jesus, and your whole family, of course. So I just was so afraid to lose that. But then came a point where I could see that my daughter was going to be hurt if I stayed in this marriage, and so I thought, I made this mistake. I'm gonna sacrifice myself for her sake, that she will have a better life. And so I did. I left, and my heart broke for my ex-husband. I felt so sorry for him, and I know it was a difficult road, and it's continued to be a difficult road for him. But it was the best thing I did up until that point, was to leave. And so from there, I just continued being LDS. James and I met, it was about a year after I left my ex, and we started dating, and pretty quick. It's so funny. James and I are so different. We're like, in fact, you'll see as I share my story, and if you've listened to his, even our journeys, even though we were married, are so different. But often God does that. Opposites attract for a reason. I think it's so we can be more complete and whole together, if we realize that and embrace it. For a long time, I didn't. But yeah, so we met. We within 6 months of dating, we were engaged, and then we got married a month or so after that. I'm a CPA, and so we knew, like, okay, we got engaged in December, and busy season was coming, tax season. And I knew there would be no time in that point. So I'm like, we wanted to remain like virtuous. And so we're like, okay, we need to just do this quickly. So we got married in January, went through crazy busy season and all the blended family issues that go with that. That was hard. just realizing we both had so much baggage still and things to work through. And James, like, he kind of shared his family, doesn't talk about a lot. He's a very reserved guy. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, just being very, Cuban, we're very open and share a lot. And so there was a lot of communication issues with us. And James so there was a lot of confusion, like, what is going on right off the bat? But it was fine. We were just, the whitewashed walls.
Yeah.
We had a beautiful house in the middle of Gilbert, Arizona. It was on an acre of land, and we had chickens, and I mean, it was definitely like the dream house. And then we had fruit trees, this little farm, and then we very soon after got married. We had in a few years we had our son Ashton, and then 2 years after him came our son Ethan, and Rinsley's
And what's your daughter's name?
Rinsley. I forgot to say her name.
Okay.
Rinsley. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so we have.
Yeah, and actually, if you want to, she's a singer-songwriter. Has a
Awesome.
bunch of,
We can put a link in
yeah,
the show notes if you'd
yeah,
like.
and it's awesome because she has her own story that's beautiful, as she came also out and has she loves the Lord, and her husband are actually missionaries in Ephraim, and so it's just so neat to see what God has done since we've all been on this faith journey. But she was along with me on this journey. So as James began to question, I didn't know why he was just more passive than ever, and I couldn't understand it, because here he is, what he's portraying to everyone is that he's the wears the white shirt to church every Sunday, and he's taking all the callings. Busy attorney, took over his dad's law firm, just doing all the right things. But in our home, he doesn't seem to want to have Bible study, or not Bible study, but Book of Mormon study. He doesn't seem to want to do family home evening. I'm just dragging the family along, and I'm like, what's going on here? And so I'm just in confusion. And I didn't realize that actually all that time he was starting to question. He was afraid to tell me, because you always hear the stories of, once a spouse starts to question and they mention it to the other spouse may say, well, I'll leave you if you leave the church. And so in the meantime, my sister, who's a doctor, was teaching gospel doctrine class in her ward. And she was always even stronger member than I was. She was seminary counsel, just, always doing everything just right. Amazing. She's an amazing person. But she was teaching gospel doctrine and started to dig and find out the stuff about Joseph Smith and the polygamy and marrying 14-year-old girls and, and other men's wives, all these things. So she starts really like, what is this?
As a gospel doctrine teacher.
Yeah. She's like realizing this is doctrine I have never heard about. I did not know about these things. So her and her husband, who they had a really neat marriage together, start to question, and they start to think, well, nothing is true. So life is just for fun. We just need to live it up. So they start to live it up so much that this really neat couple, they were so fun to be around. They actually end up split up because what they were doing is not conducive to a good marriage in any religion, and even in secular terms. And so they split up, and then my brother, he starts to question too. And so there's 3 of us that are close. I have 2 other stepbrothers, but sadly not. We didn't grow up very close. They lived in California. But the 2 of them start to question, and I start crying to James one day. Oh my gosh, they're both like leaving the church, and the church gives you this impression that if you leave, well, they say it. It's not just an impression that you're going to outer darkness. And so I'm like, they're leaving the church. What's going to happen? Their lives are going to become a mess. And James actually surprises me and says, well, don't be so hard on them. I actually have a lot of questions myself. And I'm like,
that's when it came out.
That's when it came out.
Whoa.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what you do? And so but then he started to share, and I was so, because he was holding so much in, and I felt like this man next to me, I didn't know who he was anymore, because he was something was going on with him, right. And he was not sharing. And so to have him share what was going on in his heart, I was like, okay, I was so happy to hear that, to have some explanation of what was going on in him. And I've always known James to be very methodical. He's very thoughtful. He never does anything without really thinking it through. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with him. It was just, he was just so peaceful inside, and he was just a thinker, and I loved his mind and how he'd think about things.
I do too. I think our audience does
thank
too.
Thank you. I know. I love when he shares what he's like seeing in the scriptures.
Yeah.
And, there's those verses in Ephesians says like it's something to the effect of wash your wife with the word. I'm like, oh, I love when he does that. So anyway, so he starts sharing his questions, stuff like, and I think he shared with his interview some of those questions. And I was like, so at first I was like, wow. And I resonated with the questions. I could understand them, but I wasn't ready to let go of Mormonism. I mean, to me, the picture that I had of Joseph Smith, do you remember the Legacy movie that came out years and years ago? They showed it at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building.
Yes.
Yes. They paint a picture of every woman's dream guy.
Yes.
Right? He was like, I just remember the scene where he's beating the rugs.
Yes.
And some man comes by and said, how are you doing that? Shouldn't your wife be doing that? Something like that. And he's like, and he kind of rebukes the guy and just says that this is how you show love. Well, oh my gosh. We know that's not the real Joseph Smith, but I thought that's who he was. So I could not imagine that the anti-Mormon stuff that was out there about him could be true. So I could not let go of Joseph Smith. And I could not look. I had read the Book of Mormon probably 16 times. I read it all the time, not because I loved it so much, but because I thought every time I read it, I was told as a young woman that my day would go better every time I read the Book of Mormon. So I read it that many times, not because I was so intrigued, because I wasn't getting anything new every time. Not like the Bible. The Bible's amazing. It truly is the living word. But I would just read it and then think my day was going to go better. And, so that's why.
That's what you can get out of it.
Yes, exactly.
That's a theme with most of Mormonism, right?
Yes. What can
Jesus,
I get out
it's his power for Nelson.
Yes.
There's priesthood enables. So there's always a step removed.
Yes.
Based on what you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And even scripture reading gets reduced to this.
Yes. That's such a good point. I love how you put that. Because it is so true. Yeah.
So you're reading this, you're thinking, someone that bad couldn't have translated this.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and you know how they always say, like, Joseph Smith, like, he had a 3rd grade education. How could this, look at this amazing book he wrote. He couldn't have written this, That was in my mind.
At some point, we're going to do a Book of Mormon series on this, and I'm going to show that it's impossible for anyone else to have written it.
Yes, that would be good. You need to do that.
This issue in upstate New York. Yeah. Right here. It would have been true in South Carolina. But,
but so good. You need to do that episode.
I know. There's not enough time in a day.
Yes, I know.
But
oh, man.
So it's already an emotional moment.
Yeah.
You're, expressing yourself to your husband.
Yeah.
He then thinks, well, this is as good a time as any.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, this is like the rug was.
Yeah. Well, I didn't feel so bad right then because he told me this. Okay. So it gave me assurance. I knew he wasn't going to leave because he said, but I don't know of a better way to raise a family.
There you go.
This is all we know.
Gotcha.
And so I wasn't afraid in that sense. I'm like, okay, he's still staying in. And so then it became something we were just talking about together, and we'd go on hikes and discuss his questions and ponder the questions, But eventually, I'm not somebody that could just status quo. Eventually I was like, there's got to be answers to these questions. I've got to go find the answers. So I would never go to the anti-Mormon stuff. I was so afraid. I'd go to his dad. I went to my uncle that I really respected, and I would go to the church's apologetics, and they would give me answers that would satisfy me, at least for a time. Mm-hmm. But eventually, a few years into that, the answers were not good enough anymore. And they weren't answering things that were coming up like Freemasonry and the temple and things like this. And I was like, okay, nobody's giving you a good answer for that. And then the Book of Abraham, there's not a good answer for that.
It's an inspired translation.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Totally. I'm like,
by inspired, they mean, how can we get off the hook for it not being exactly what Smith said?
Exactly.
So we'll put the word inspired on it.
Exactly. It just
very different use of the word. Yes. That masks over.
Doesn't matter that in the Journal of Discourses, he does say that this is penned by Abraham.
That very manuscript that we can date.
Yes.
That script didn't even exist in Abraham's day.
Exactly. So
it's the pain. Here's two people have experienced that moment when finally, for whatever reason, and I do think God is behind it.
Yeah,
you have the courage to see this isn't what it claims to be.
Yes. And so that point, but I still wasn't ready to let go of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. So our daughter, she was about 15 at the time, 14, 15. And she was a competitive ice skater, but broke an ankle. I know, she was really good. She's fearless on the ice. But then she broke an ankle on the ice. And it just she lost that fearlessness, that edge she had. But she, on a whim, went to enter a voice. It was just a voice contest, so a singing contest in Scottsdale, Arizona, and she won her competition. She'd never had a singing lesson in her life, so she decided, this is my focus. So we were looking for a school that would kind of feed that, and kind of teach her some of the vocal technique. And so we found this little private Mormon. It was a Kimber Academy that Cleon Skousen, I think, is the one that founded that curriculum. Yeah.
The listeners should be familiar with that name.
Yes. Yeah. And so we decided to enroll her in that. She was a freshman in high school, and she loved it. And it was interesting because they would learn, they would just be on the same schedule as the other seminaries, the seminary and church, but they would do a whole hour of, Book of Mormon or Bible, whatever they were on, but mostly it was a Book of Mormon. And so she was learning more and more about, Mormonism, and falling in love with God, because it was really her first, awareness of it, of God.
Engagement.
Yeah. Right. And so she was loving God, and just thinking about him. And there was, but this school taught Mormonism at a very new height of legalism. And so the director of the school was an amazing woman. I loved her. Her and I became very good friends. Well, one day we're getting closer all the time, and I'm helping her with different school things. She reveals to Rinsley and I that she doesn't believe, and it was President Monson at the time, that he was a true prophet. And we're like, what? Really? And then Rinsley's like, Mom, she's right. I'm sure he's not, because when has he ever prophesied anything? I'm like, well, that's true, but I don't know about this. And she gave me some books to read, and she was following Denver Snuffer.
Interesting.
So Denver Snuffer in 2014 was excommunicated from the church. And this was right around that time. This was 2014.
I know exactly where I was.
Yeah.
And starts his sermon tour.
Yes.
I don't know what he would call it, but lecture tour.
Lecture tour. And he had written the first Comforter, or the second Comforter. That was his first book.
Is that the first one
That's the first one I read.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that one, I think why it grabbed me was because even though I love the Mormon church, I was so empty and hungry. I felt like I wanted more of God, but it was just so surface. And I was trying to go to the temple all the time, and I was just trying to feel God more, but there was nothing. And so that book, The Second Comforter, really talked about having a relationship with God and spending time with God and just talking to him. And it was just about that relationship, which I never experienced that in Mormonism before.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what drew me.
Can I go back to one thing really quick?
Yes.
Because what I want to ask right here.
Yeah.
I should have asked this part earlier to set up for
it. Yeah.
When you first went through the temple.
Yeah.
Was that to be married?
Yes. So to get my endowments before I got married the first time.
Can we talk about anything you want to share on that, and then come back to this? Because I want to talk about that book and why it stood out to you.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
Was your first temple experience positive?
It was no. because it was really interesting. I mean, it should have been a big red flag, but my ex forgot to get the day off of work and to go through the endowments with me. And we were getting married like the next day or two. I think it was it's in the next 2 days or something like that. And so he just tells me like an hour before that he couldn't get it off of work. So once again, my grandpa was the one that took me through and like received me through the veil.
Right.
Yes. And that should have been a huge red flag. I mean, especially having that experience where my grandpa had to step in for my dad too. Yeah. And it did, like we did have some very serious conversations from that, my ex. And I did almost call it off, but I was just too, just infatuated and just overlooked it. But no, I just went in there, and to be honest, it wasn't that it was such a negative experience. It's just that everybody had built it up so much, saying that you're going to feel the Spirit so amazing. And I'm like, well, I'm not really feeling the Spirit, but I just want to laugh. It was so strange.
Yeah.
And we had to wear, and then just seeing all the men with the hat.
Yes.
I was having the hardest time holding in my giggles.
Wow.
I know. I was like, but I was not feeling the spiritual. I was trying. I was really trying.
I think I'm trying to remember exactly. I remember asking your husband about this. Yeah. So there's washings, anointings, endowment.
Yeah.
On the anointing, women do it to each other, right?
Yes.
Do you mind letting the listener in on this? Because there's a strain of Mormon feminism that's legitimate, I think, historically.
Yes, historically, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the Linda King Newell work on this, right? Gift given, gift taken away. By the way, my mom lived with her at the time she's writing some of this stuff. Her biography on Emma Hale Smith.
Interesting.
Anyway, I think of her as like the female version of D. Michael Quinn. It is so funny listening to her because she has the Relief Society voice too.
Yes.
But she's talking about women anointings and all this stuff.
Yes.
Anyway, we haven't given enough attention to the feminine side of this stuff. Was that a surprise to you? When you're like, it's not a priesthood holder doing this.
It's not a priesthood holder. It was a woman, and which I'm glad because it's very awkward, Yeah. and stuff. But it's interesting because they have those temple classes before you go, series you go to, and it's supposed to prepare you, but they don't tell you anything. You don't really know anything that you're doing in there. So you come in, and I'm given this like special new name, and they just kind of touch you in different areas. But it wasn't like I didn't feel violated or anything. I think from what I hear, because James and I went through in 1990 before they changed this. I'm sorry. Right after the changes. Right after the changes. So we didn't experience the changes.
So you didn't have the Protestant minister.
No, nor the blood covenant. Sign.
Yeah, the curses.
Yes, the curses. We didn't have that. So that it wasn't too bad. And so they just kind of touching different places. It didn't feel too weird. It was weird, but it wasn't like violating. And then they give you this new name, which I thought was so super special. I'm like, wow, they somehow got this revelation that I have this name, which years later, when James and I get married in the temple, I wasn't sure if I was remembering the name right. So they had us wait for the temple president to come out, and then they call me in, and then he looks up in this book. Okay, what day did you go through? And I tell him, and he like looks at, okay, the name that day was Sarah. That day, the name was Sarah. I was like, this wasn't a special name for me.
Everybody that went through on that day.
Yes, that was super like, wow, this is very,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So
started to.
It's, so it sounds like the washing is similar.
Yeah.
The anointing, what stood out was a woman doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did they prep you at all for that?
No.
Because I think it may be the only one left.
Yeah.
With women doing it, unless you're dealing with kind of underground Mormonism. Like I had a matriarchal blessing.
Oh yeah, no.
But it was just from some charismatic lady.
Yes, just some older lady that just kind of said the scriptures that she has to say.
Same thing, but it was Heavenly Mother stuff. instead of Heavenly Father. So it's kind of interesting.
That's what it used to be.
But it's not, that's not official.
No.
That's not. So I'm trying to think in the official, LDS officialdom, here's a woman putting her hands on another woman's head and basically doing what the priesthood is doing. In the
totally. And with the oil and everything. Okay. Yeah. It's so true that you're bringing that out.
Yeah, because it's interesting.
Yes, that is interesting.
That it's, I know. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like, and then with the, endowment ceremony itself, I just remember, because I remember I told you I had read the Book of Mormon so many times. What kept standing out to me was, as we're doing these signs and tokens, is like, they talk about in the Book of Mormon how evil it is to have these secret combinations. So I kept trying to justify that in my mind. Well, I'm like, well, maybe in this context it's okay. But I'm thinking that how is that seems to contradict, that was like, but I kept going and I kept trusting that the people before me knew what they were doing. And,
Well, there's a theme here too, just as with Castro, some are more equal than others. I'm sure he had more than the required amount of chairs in his home.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
Here, not all secret combination, some are more sacred than others.
Yes.
And so here's exactly the approved secret combination.
Yes.
Because, you're right. I think the Book of Mormon in its context, Masonry was in mind.
Yeah.
I think Dan Vogel nailed it in seeing the anti-Masonry is behind the secret combination stuff.
Yes.
And that is ironic.
Yeah.
That even just that variable of the temple worship would be condemned by the Book of Mormon in its real context of the 1820s and
so
New York.
Interesting. Yes, how you put it like that. Yeah. Craziness.
So, was there anything theologically that stood out from the endowment part for you?
I think, the movie and all that seems to go along with like the Book of Abraham and what we were taught as kids. Back then, it was not, it was definitely more on our minds. And I remember it talked about a lot that we could become, gods and goddesses, even outside of the temple, which is so strange because I talk to people now, especially younger ones, and some of them act like they've never heard about it ever before. And I'm like, no, this is what Mormonism was prided on. We were a peculiar people. We had something different, something special. We were not Christian, that we were told that growing up.
No.
It's craziness now. So it's interesting.
It culturally too. That shift.
See the shift. It's so interesting.
So it is your grandfather who baptized you, who taught you the Book of Abraham as a kid.
As a kid,
that brings you through the veil. And that's key. I mean, I never got married in the LDS temple, but for a man just going through, right? It's one of the temple workers. It's a stand-in, and you're tested on the endowment up to that point. With the final handshake and keywords. This one being longer. And then if you do it correctly, and they'll help you, whatever. They're not as strict as you'd think, actually.
Yes. You get really nervous at first, like, I'm not going to remember. Right. But they do help you through it. At the same time,
they're encouraging, memorize this. You're going to need it on your spiritual ascent.
Yes, you won't be able to get through when you get to heaven.
Through the heavens.
I was really worried. Like, I need to make sure I have this memorized.
That fear of, what if I forget this key moment?
Yes.
But just one of the temple worker men would have pulled me through. But for a woman, right? At least for the first time, the idea is your husband, but in this case, it was your grandfather doing it for you.
Would pull you
Just
through.
want that difference to be there.
And one thing, as I started, my eyes started to be more open. And actually, as I was entering to this, beginning to follow Denver Snuffer, as I was still going to the temple before I wasn't allowed to anymore, I started to really listen to the words of of all the different, parts of the temple. And I started to realize that there's such a lie out there, because even in their own words, everything is dependent on your perfect obedience. So all those blessings, like the sealing in the temple, It's not the actual sealing.
Right.
It's only it only means that you will have it if you're actually perfect.
Right.
You know, and if and as Denver kind of was bringing attention to that, that's Joseph Smith said we had to have our calling and election made sure. And in order to do that, Jesus Christ himself had to appear to you, and you had to feel the prints on his hands and his feet. And if you don't have that experience, you don't actually get to live together with your husband forever.
Yeah.
So that's what's so skewed, as everybody thinks they're married forever in time and all eternity, but nobody's perfect. So,
right. It's,
you know.
And we pointed out a discontinuity with the Book of Mormon. Here's a continuity where it's the brother of Jared becomes the model, right?
Yes.
Where he had so much faith in a character in the Book of Mormon. The Lord couldn't withhold himself, and he could see him.
Right. That's right.
And by the way,
Loved that part.
right. And so now we fast forward back to where we were with Denver Snuffer. This second comforter book, Conversing with the Lord through the Veil.
The veil, yes.
This is not weird on Mormon terms.
No.
In fact, he's kind of a renaissance of what's already there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. He's bringing it back to the awareness of the Mormon people. Because Denver Snuffer himself is very much a historian. He loved to get all he could, get his hands on of historical documents of Joseph Smith and just many, all the journal discourses. He would go to estate sales and all these things. So he has quite an extensive library. And so he was bringing the people that were following him back to that, which, so that was interesting, just realizing, wow, these things that are being said in the temple, they're not even real blessings. They're not really even, we're not even attaining them right now. And that last thing that you say as you go through the veil, now I'm like, oh my gosh, there's not even anything other than the name of the sign, which is the sun. It doesn't talk about Jesus at all. It's about giving all your resources, your posterity, all to this organization. Talk about demonic. I'm like, it's very scary, actually, when you start to understand. Yeah.
And this is something that will apply to certain forms of charismatics, like Benny Hinn.
Yeah.
It's explicitly in the temple, you don't speak ill of the Lord's anointed.
Yeah.
And that's why even doing what we're doing here is I feel like it's becoming less taboo because they need membership.
Because there's so many people.
But when you were growing up,
gosh.
if you even questioned, right?
Yeah,
you were violating your temple covenants and therefore not only forfeiting your own exaltation, but perhaps even part of your families or your families.
And there's a story in my family. My mom, I was a little girl, and my mom had been to the temple with my dad, and my aunt, who had already become agnostic, was really pressing my mom. And I was in the car with them, and my aunt kept saying, tell me what's going on in the temple. And my mom, because she didn't really believe it, she begins to tell my aunt what goes on in the temple. And I start throwing up. So my mom got really scared. And I think actually, because we do know the enemy does have some power, he's definitely, God can squash him and even us with the authority of Jesus' name. So he's not anyone we should be afraid of, but he does have power to do things. And so I attribute that definitely to the enemy. And, but that's very big. No in the church, especially back then.
Yes. Wow. So
yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about Snuffer more in a minute, but to keep the story flow continuing, she gives you this book.
Yes. And I eat it up. I love it.
It's just...
Yeah, it's speaking to me, to a part of me that just, was hungry.
Yeah.
And so I start really digging in and trying to have more time with God. And I'm realizing I always thought that the only place I could really feel God was in the temple, and that's why I was trying to go so often. But I'm starting to feel just a closeness with who I thought was God. And I do believe he really was there. There's a common grace, right? And God did know that my heart was to find him. So even though I'm in error, I know God is meeting me in these moments alone with him, just talking to him and spending time with him. And so I'm feeling more than I ever have in my life. And so I'm like, I think this there's something to this. And so I start buying all his books, Denver Sniffer's books, and going to the conferences and meeting in the little like home church groups that they were doing. Like they were like families that were also following him, that were meeting together on Sunday mornings. And that's a funny story too, because they're like thinking, okay, well, they kind of uncovered the truth about the word of wisdom, right? And that Joseph Smith drank too. He even drank the night before he died. So they're having sacrament or communion, we would call it, but sacrament is what Mormons call it, together. But we'd have it with big cups of wine and hunks of bread, leavened bread, and it was and it was just a very different time.
Is this That's
and
what
James
I want to.
is still, he knows something's off, but he is staying in because we don't know anything better.
Yeah.
I really think this is the answer to our questions. And so he decides to pick up. I wanted him to read Second Comforter first because it's a better progression. The heavenly gift. Yeah. So he reads that and he says he just got a pit in his stomach and he's like, this is crazier than the current Mormon church. This but I was still enamored with Joseph Smith, and especially now under like reading done
Himself claims to have been visited by Jesus, having this experience.
Exactly.
I probably should have said that about the book a minute ago.
Yes, that's a very important part of the book. Yeah, exactly.
Charismatic stuff that you never hear from the LDS leaders.
Never.
I mean, to look at it is kind of interesting how hungry LDS people are. I mean, Nelson can be like, I had a. Well, it's not just you, or these, just some quote unquote weirdos.
Yeah,
it's like the LDS people are so hungry, for charismatic authority.
Yeah. Is with Jesus and he says he saw Moses and has all these different spiritual experiences, these visions. These groups were forming, and I just remember that it seemed like, okay, so he's saying, going back to Joseph Smith, that you have to have your calling and the standards to the nth degree. Like I remember our daughter, who's like, she's 15, 16 at the time, not wearing any. We're going to the book of Isaiah. If you put any eye makeup, and that you could be condemned for that.
Daughters of Zion.
Right? Yes, daughters of Zion. Exactly. Same time, and she's trying so hard to be so perfect,
right?
And it was just throwing.
Or I could say, I mean, there are some historical issues like on polygamy and stuff that we may get to with Denver that I think he's absolutely wrong on.
Oh yes, I think we should touch on that.
But religion, it might be more Kirtland era, mingled with Nauvoo era theology. They say Brigham Young is the problem.
Yes,
but what I want people to definitely hear what you were just saying is the more authentic Mormonism is harder to live.
Oh, totally.
It's not easier to live.
No,
it's harder to live. Right than the current leadership, or it might be more democratic polity rather than this hierarchical, corporation. Pork, or it's not just, or it's never eating meat, or whatever. What people don't want to eat meat, that's fine. It's just it's more stuff that they're putting on.
one organization and one person, like, kind of top down giving the instructions. It's like everybody's getting their own revelation. And if you're, if you're not getting baptized every month, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that you're to you. And you're thinking, if you're not giving it all, like there were people in our group that sold everything and gave up everything. That's where at the time Denver Snuffer began to say, like, hey, we're going to create a Zion there. And it hasn't happened. In fact, the families, they were all good friends. It was all great. They bought all this land together. Within 3 or 4 months, they were all fighting, and eventually it all fell apart. So people are trying so hard to live, all these things, but that's part of it, right? So we're all trying to have these spiritual experiences. Like our calling and election is made sure. And everybody's just getting more weighed down and more weighed down because it's not happening, and try and attain this level of being so holy that Jesus would appear to you.
And then that then gives you an authority. Became implied within the community.
Exactly.
Instead of defined for the community.
Exactly. And so the more people that experience, and these people that were having the experiences, they were the ones given like an opportunity to speak at the next conference, and they were doing for it's been like 7-8 years now. No, 8 years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This is interesting.
Yes.
So what are emphasized generally in this community, which called the Remnant now?
The Remnant now.
Right.
Yeah, back then they didn't have a name, but now they do.
Right. They have their own like standard works.
Yeah.
Fell through
I
in
think
Idaho.
That's what fell through. They were hoping, and
to
this
have
is
their
the
own
plan.
temple.
Their own temple. Yep. And Denver was encouraging people, as long as they weren't getting excommunicated. What I did, that we should keep going to the temple, and
because there's something there.
Yeah, there's
it might
something
not be
there.
a
It's
ton
not,
left.
Yes, exactly.
But
there's.
So the emphasis we've hit hard. You have to have, for the sealing to be functional.
Yeah.
Jesus himself has to appear.
Yeah.
Emphasis more on knowledge and experience than on obedience.
Yes.
Though obedience
is
denied.
definitely up there too. Like you have to be very
Okay. Difference in public emphasis, at least. I'm going off of just what I've heard from them.
Definitely. I mean, I just remember the modesty for women.
Wow.
Yeah, that was.
Did they go back to the traditional garments, or
no?
did they keep the garments?
They're still
where they
keeping
were?
the garments as they are, but definitely just.
On one hand, one hand, no, but I've also heard that some of them are like strictly herbal and get into.
Definitely have the wine.
Okay.
In fact, in our groups, there were some families that were even, because they thought this is a spiritual thing and our kids could get closer to God. Of wine, and they'd be passed out under the table.
And they would say that is spiritual.
Yeah, that was spiritual growth, which I'm like,
talk about slain in the spirit.
in his episode with you, how he would take the boys. Winsley always wanted to be with me, and so her and I would go every Sunday to. James and I, we were so just fighting every day. And so at the least, I mean, I obviously was not respecting him very well. And at the least, so I did not let the boys drink, even though they would badger me because they saw the other kids drinking. But no, gratefully, James on that at least.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
No, it is interesting.
Their view of baptism. Take us through this. This might be foreign to the
Smith, that they were getting baptized all the time. Like that was common practice, that they, in order to get closer to God, you had to get baptized multiple times. There was this movement, like at least once a month, that people were getting baptized, and then people were having their own revelations about it. So there was even because he was always having a new revelation. And so he said that we had to get baptized, not just a normal baptism, what. The 4 different directions, north, south, east, west, in order to be baptized to the 4 different archangels.
Yeah.
And so like Gabriel. You even remember better than me, but yes.
Yeah.
So so I never did that.
Raphael, Uriel, I think are the other
that's
two.
Right. That's right.
And there was tons of speculation in that group as to who.
I remember, and it was about how we somehow, because God progressed, or Jesus, supposedly, of reincarnation. This was kind of floating around too.
So you did hear this.
Yes.
It's funny. I texted you this. I should have defined what I was saying. Some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But then it got so crazy because then Denver later did a subsequent blog post that said, okay, I need to qualify.
Yeah. Yep. In fact, I met one.
Did you?
Yes.
That's so
I met one of these Solomons.
Yes.
Typically, if I had friends, it was always some famous figure, you know, it was never the butler, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just
I thought I was Ruth before.
Interesting.
I mean, this is how deceived you can be. And so,
no, I didn't have a biblical name, but I believed in MMP.
Oh, okay.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
I was hardcore on it. I think the tone would have been a little nicer, but I did an episode with my brother responding to because Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow were into this, right?
Yes.
Both.
They were into the Zephyr book too.
Yep. Second Comforter.
I didn't realize. I mean, I've heard of the Visions of Glory.
Yep.
And
Visions
stuff.
of Glory was another big book.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah. Is a big thing.
Huge.
And that bringing that up, how about the imminent second coming stuff? Did you hear people prophesying?
Oh, completely. 2017 that had the 4 blood moons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they thought it was
wild.
right there. Yeah, and there were people saying they were having visions of the. Going off, and there was fire everywhere, and the second coming was right there. And so that's why many of these families moved up to this northern Idaho area, because they thought they would escape that. And they started preparing. I mean, some of my friends were working so hard to have 7 years of food storage, and they thought they were going to have like tent cities on their land
in the mountains,
to help people.
And, the dream, I'm trying to remember the term for it, the mountain dream.
Yeah, yes.
Historians are going to look back at that period, and unless they're LDS, the LDS historians will be the ones to minimize it the most.
Yes, yes.
But if there's some historian that can just see what's actually going on the ground instead of just having it defined by Nelson's feelings or Monson's feelings at this time.
Yes,
we'll see, man, on the ground, everybody's buying guns, everybody's investing in gold, everybody's getting, it wasn't, in case you lose a job.
Yeah.
I heard the 7 years thing all the time as a Journal of Discourses reference.
Yes.
A prophecy.
Exactly.
Talking about gold will be worth more than wheat. People, I mean, it was wild.
It was wild. Everybody was talking about this for sure.
I was part of this. I mean, I cringe now thinking of how much money I spent on this stuff that I don't even care about anymore.
Totally. If it wasn't for James, I would have spent a lot more.
Right. Well, thank God for him.
I know. I
needed a James in my life.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
But, I mean, there was this feeling of just imminency.
Yes.
It's coming.
It's coming. And I'm sure, like, I remember accusing James of not caring about our family because this was coming and he wasn't worried about it or he wasn't paying attention to it. And it was bad.
Yeah, what a time.
Yeah, it was a crazy time.
How was Joseph Smith's polygamy viewed? Of course, Brigham becomes the scapegoat. And of course, that's an important thing to just see about Mormonism generally. If you have a Mormonism outside that mainstream LDS leadership, you have to find where the line is.
Yes.
So for the Snufferites, they typically draw the line at Brigham.
At Brigham Young. Yeah, that's where it went off. Yeah.
Whereas, others don't. It'll be Heber J. Grant.
Yes.
Or it'll be
where polygamy stopped.
Right.
And we should continue it. Yes.
Exactly. Or Kimball.
Yes.
So with the line being drawn there, how do they distinguish the polygamy of Brigham versus the polygamy?
Very interesting, So what Denver Suffer said was that these marriages that Joseph Smith had 46, I think, something like that, that they were not true, like they weren't consummated. They were only spiritual marriages because, and this is what's so convoluted now, and the arrogance is crazy, is that Joseph Smith said that these women, in order for their fit for the family line to be saved, they had to have somebody that was married to him or attached to him in some way so that they could connect to Jesus, that he was the only connection to Jesus. And so that's why men were allowing him to marry their wives or their young daughters, because they thought it was a way for their whole family. They thought they were doing this for the whole family so they all could be saved and be in the celestial kingdom together. So it's just, I know there was some element to that, but he obviously was consummating those marriages.
Yeah, at least some.
Yeah, at least some
according
of them.
To them.
Know that. According to them, for sure.
Which is, pretty important.
But that's what Denver Suffer is maintaining, is that they were not consummated and they weren't that type of marriage. And so, craziness.
Yeah. Well, what we do to try to get the conclusion we want out of the data we see.
Yeah.